Okay, so don't go anywhere because on the blue stage, we are having, well, we're calling it a fireside chat. However, I think Gerard and I are probably going to pretend we're in Barcelona where this was meant to be face to face and maybe reimagine it as more of a kind of beachside chat with our sangria and our paella. What do you think, Gerard? Shall we kind of imagine it that way?
I'll sign up for that any day, Nadal, so thanks. Yeah, but next time. I mean, the world seems to be slowly getting out of Corona. The news from China doesn't look that good. So we're shooting at a moving target.
I know. And I do kind of wonder, and this is for another discussion, whether the world of conferences has changed and maybe we're going to be coming along to conferences in our avatar as opposed to the real person in future. And the whole kind of way we interact is actually transforming. But we can dwell on that a little bit later.
For sure.
So
yeah, I know that paella and sangria or wine, people need to convince me that Teams meeting is better than that over time. So I
exactly.
still think I will be traveling. Yeah.
So Gerard, I'm going to get you to say a couple of words about where you are and what you're doing now. But I look on your LinkedIn profile, and we're talking about some big major players in the industry of the world, but also kind of what's going on for business. So you worked for Shell for a number of years, and then in August 2020, you've moved over to ABN AMRO. And if I think about banking, for me, it kind of represents just how not just the world of work has fundamentally shifted forever, but how we engage with products and services. So I too worked in banking years ago. And when I did, we went into the bank. Yeah. So we went in, we spoke to a teller. Maybe there was even pieces of paper. And now I just access more my banking through the phone. Yeah. I come from Australia. I like to move financial currency around a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'll go to one of these small players now. I won't necessarily always go to a bank because I can get a more competitive rate. So a big bank like ABN AMRO, you're under a lot of pressure. And so we're going to explore in this talk, how do you not just stay in the game, but how do you win the game? And I'm really intrigued. How do you do this through your people agenda? So Gerard, would you say a few words just to introduce yourself first about, who you are and what you do? And then we'll get into our first question, which is all about what does this transformation in the workplace mean for ABN AMRO?
Yeah, many thanks, Netal. And so I indeed worked for Shell for 30 years, so it's a long time. I'm a lawyer by education. I'm married to a psychologist, so I get a lot of feedback. Not always what I wanted, but that seems to be healthy and indeed, probably about, I still can count months, probably 20 months ago that I joined ABN AMRO Bank. I'm Dutch. The office I'm sitting in here right now is close to the beach. It's where my house is, and I really enjoy this changing environment and shaping and framing a people agenda that is not just good, which is nice, but really delivers competitive differentiation. And that's easy to say, it's hard to do, and I seem to like, and both my former patch, of course, where I was accountable for a large part of Shell globally, in what is called the downstream, very much a people business, in transition, obviously, with the energy transition, and so apart from my executive role at the bank in the board, I also still love the energy transition for real. So I'm part of what is called Alliander, which is basically a network organization. They provide gas, electricity to people's homes. And that's where the real rubber hits the road. And we have huge issues in terms of capacity there. So I like the strategic part of financing of the energy transition, which is an important part of the job, but also just the simple, basic, difficult things of getting enough copper in the ground, for example, to just transport electricity in an electrifying world. So we can talk about all those things, and I've been part of this organization for more than 10 years. Love to go to Barcelona and found it a good reason, which tells me the last thing about me. I also like to enjoy life whilst working hard, which is, with a war raging at the east flank of Europe, is hard. you're confronted with images that I didn't hope to see again, not for Europe. So that's a bit the backdrop. That's where I am. And yeah, look forward to the conversation today. I've been for a while. Yeah.
Fabulous. Excellent. Well, it's fantastic to have you here today. As you said, as the world even gets even more complex around us, there was a pandemic, and that seems almost simple now with where we're going in the world this year. So the Fireside Chat, or what we're renaming the Beachside Chat, is only good if you send us questions that I can ask Gerard. So please go into the Q&A section on the platform and let us know what would you like us to explore today. I'm going to start with asking more about this. So, you're talking about not just staying in the game, you're talking about winning the game as an organization, and in particular now at ABN AMRO, where you're the chief HR officer. So what does this mean? How do you actually safeguard the future of the bank? And how do you don't want to become an obsolete player,
No.
But there's even more than that. You want to actually be in front of the other players. So what does this mean in terms of an organization? And what's your comments on this first?
Yeah. So let me keep that short, but it's really important indeed to win, to grow, not only in size, but also there are many ways you can grow in relevance, for example, for your customer. It starts for me with a real purpose. So not the Hellmann's mayonnaise variety, but a purpose that is meaningful. In our case, it's banking for better for generations to come. So it has the longer term relevance in it. Banking for better for me is very much about financing people's dreams, small dreams, bigger dreams for individuals, like buying a house. But also when you have a small enterprise, can you finance becoming a big enterprise or a bigger enterprise in your section? So I fundamentally believe that financing people's dreams, and to do that in a way that is responsible, which you can come back to later, is really important. And then you need a strategy to make it happen. So what is your focus area? Now, our focus area is expertise. So having skills, for example, around sustainability, which was what attracted me. There's a huge capability there. And it's not a surprise that a lot of companies are struggling with, for example, the investments that you need to take in order to stay sustainable and stay relevant in your sector. But there's also the personal touch in a digital age. So it's not a contradiction, it's both. And I've got a 28-year-old daughter. Without her phone, she can do nothing, which is probably an experience that you recognize. And her skills around that is already outdated compared to somebody age 12 on average. So these developments go very quickly. So we're building an experience around an app, basically, for quite a lot of our customers for the base financing. And we're focusing really on Western Europe. We still have important operations in Asia for clearing and also in the US. But our real focus is in countries like the Netherlands or Germany or France, UK, Belgium, which is a very important and relatively stable part of the Western economy, with specifically when it comes to France and Germany, opportunities to grow the digital sides specifically. And then last but not least, strategy is worth nothing. You have to execute against that. That takes difficult decisions. So you have to take control of your cost, which I guess many of the viewers will recognize. And going from a world where people visited branches to one where you do a lot of the work via phone. Also, psychology, ways of working, culture-wise, requires a lot of change. And anybody that tells me that that's an easy one lives in a different world than I do. Changing people's behavior, starting with our own, is always difficult. So the last thing to say is on the competitive field, we are quite well positioned right now, so from a financing capitalization point of view, but it is a scary time. And for example, locking down a country like Russia from SWIFT is not an easy one. And then there are a huge amount of customers who have exposure, either directly or indirectly, to Russia and Ukraine. And so when it comes to risk perspective, this is a time where you have to sharpen your pencil on scenarios and always plan for bad and hope for good.
That's fascinating. And just even on that last point, I was reading this morning that 10% of the world's wheat comes from the Ukraine, so we just the shift now that we've got in the world economy as a result of what's happening is something that we didn't foresee at all, I think, and also something that is very immediate. And this is off the back of just coming through the pandemic where we think, oh, yeah, it's back to normal now, which is far from true, it seems. So, but let's just go through some of the things that you were talking about there. So basically, it's around understanding from a strategic point of view where your organization needs to go next. And you were highlighting key areas of sustainability and becoming, moving towards that net zero direction. Digital skills and creating new digital products, which I think a lot of companies are facing. And there's a key role for HR of how do you upskill your workforce to do that. And then, of course, knowing where in the world to position yourself. And you talked about Western Europe and key particular markets. And then behind all of that is the need to actually execute. So that's great to have strategy, but you actually need to do it and build the kind of the capability, but the cultural kind of inspiration across your organization to get there. Yeah. So I'd love to just ask a question off that. So the first topic, which I know is a passion of yours, which is that sustainability and moving towards net zero. How do you start to shift an organization towards that agenda? Because that's just not just a new skill set. That's whole kind of operating models, isn't it, to move towards sustainability? Yeah. Can you tell us a bit more about what that means for your role and for ABN AMRO?
Yeah, so it was one of the reasons, as I said before, to join the bank. And then, of course, you want to explore what proof points you have to actually make. And it's easy to make the statement, but then you need to make it real. And ABN AMRO is very strong when it comes to the expertise side, but we're not a university, is what I sometimes say in the corridors. So knowing a lot about something is not going to make any critical stakeholder more happy, including ultimately our employees, because you cannot manage growth to that. But it's fantastic to have as a base. So one of the things I spend a lot of time on is to start to use that expertise, both on the defensive side, which is all the reporting you have to do, and developments go very quickly, not only in Europe, in other parts of the world as well. So the so-called taxonomy. So how do you judge whether an investment somewhere, which is very relevant, obviously, for a bank, is green, between quotation marks, contributes ultimately to the Paris Agreement and anything that came after that. That sounds a simple question. It's actually not that easy. So you have to be really precise. And then there are big disagreements. So our French colleagues believe with 52 nuclear plants that nuclear is a very important part of a green taxonomy. Whereas our German friends basically abolished that notion after the Fukushima incident. And I don't think politically that will very rapidly change. So there's just a simple example of taxonomy to determine what sort of advice you want to give your customers on where to invest in and where not. And how, by the way, you do that for your own. I also look after the real estate of the bank globally. How do you do that for your own real estate, your buildings? And how do you provide offices, for example, those that are left, that are actually on their own Paris proof? So I think that's the defensive side. I'm more excited, actually. So you need to do that. And we need to do all the reporting. And I don't want to bother the audience with a target setting for boards and how you link remuneration to some of these targets, which we all will recognize. The exciting bit is where you can make a real business out of sustainability. And take a very simple example. ABN AMRO Bank is big in mortgages, so that's nice. About 165 billion on the books is mortgages. And could we actually cross-sell, when you sell a mortgage, a whole package to increase the sustainability of a house? When you have a trust relationship, because for most people that's the biggest investment they make in their life, why not build on that relationship and say to somebody, we can create a package which comes with isolation of your home, a heat pump, solar panels, whatever it is. So these sort of things we're looking at a very mundane level. And then there's some really big investment needed. If you, for example, want to reduce your reliance on gas, which all people on the call will recognize is a massive theme right now, also with the dependency on Russian gas. You might want to go to hydrogen, for example.
Yep.
For that, you require huge systemic investments. That's another thing. And then you more proactively get into financing of a more sustainable world. And then the trick, of course, is to make a healthy margin on that. Because risk assessment of an unknown business, and I guess people recognize that on the call, is hard. But that's the balance we're trying to find. Of course, you need to do the defensive bit, but I'm really excited about doing business with sustainability. Do good for the planet, do good for our customers, do good for our shareholders, and our people will enjoy growing in an area that they can talk about on a Friday evening at a barbecue, which is very popular, I understand, in Australia. I've done
very much so. And I would say that sustainability and dealing with climate change is a hot topic in Australia as well. I've just been out there for 3 months, and I think what I really like about what you've just explored there, Gerard, is it's not just seeing how you need to move to this new kind of part of workplace transformation. So yes, we need to talk about being more sustainable. We need to kind of operate in that way. But what you're talking about is actually seeing the growth opportunity of how you can capitalize on this. So I love the example of, your customer taking up the mortgage. There's a whole range of opportunities of what they can engage with in terms of sustainable lifestyle that the bank can be part of. And I think that's the key here, is actually going into these new kind of products and services and market areas is how you win the game, how you build on opportunities, which I think is how we start to reframe some of these conversations. We've got some great questions coming in, and one I'd love to start with kind of goes into your comment about you're not a university, which I just love. So feeding off that, we have a question from Etan, who is saying banking is getting more and more digital. Skill shelf life is said to be just 2 years. I would love to know what the learning culture is within the bank and how ABN AMRO ensures its workforce has the right skills required for the future of banking. So tell us a bit more about this, not just being a university, but actually activating skill development.
So the part of university that's about learning is definitely relevant. Now, let me first say that we are not completely done on that topic. That would be grossly overstating reality. There are 24,000 people, and you got it in 1.5 years. But we did 3 things I'm really proud about. I mean, first of all, taking a move from being an organization where knowing things was so much more important than curiosity. And it's just the history of banking. And then moving from more of a knower than a learner. And of course, this is a bandwidth, very important part. So that's what leaders talk about. It is how you accumulate a team. That's also executives who ask questions more than they give answers. So, and through asking questions, you probe. And curiosity is a fantastic way to change a culture in an organization, I think. The second thing we did is build a big program around up and reskilling. Because, for example, with the closure of branches, and other industries will see the same. So there's less mortar in the equation and more digital. You want a chunk of those people are really interested and curious about building another sort of career or slightly different sort of career. For example, from a sales rep becoming a data analyst, or somebody who deals with all the issues that come up with digitization, big data, etc. And so we do upskilling, which is relatively normal. Most companies have done it, but we also started a pilot on reskilling. So fundamentally new skills. And just imagine that you've worked 20 years and somebody says to you, it's very good, but your skills are no longer, at least in the bank, not that relevant. But we want to help you in a very conscious way with all the support we can fathom to learn a different trade. And that's fantastic. So we did a pilot of 40 people in 2021, and we will scale up to 200 in this year. And we're aiming for 500 to 600 the coming years as just a normal thing to do, to make sure that when it's 2 years, your skills are obsolete. I think that's a bit too aggressive for me. It's definitely true that the half time of relevance of the skill set is reducing. and it's important that we do something. And then the last thing, which is also important, is that you hire new people into the organization, because some of these trends go so quick that these internal moves are just not producing fast enough results. Yeah, I hope that answers the question a bit.
Yeah, no, definitely.
It's an opportunity, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So basically, sort of three areas, which is the upskilling. So kind of adding on to what people already have. Then the actual reskilling around how do people move from, doing one job to something that's totally different. And then, of course, hiring for skills. So that diversity that you really want to bring in, and the new skills that you need. We've got a great question that's come in around the HR agenda, but just before we go there, I'd like to tap into one that there's been a few that's come in around skills as you've been talking around that. One that's quite interesting is how does ABN AMRO today map the skills of employees? So how do you have an idea of, what you're reskilling and what you're upskilling? And as a follow-up, if you, Gerard, would have the perfect vision on every skill of every employee, what would be the top three things you would do with that overview? So wanting to know, if you've got this amazing skills inventory, what would you actually do with it? And how far away are you from that vision? Yeah.
Really, really good. All good questions, by the way. I mean, I'll keep it quick given the time. I mean, when I came to the bank, there was a project. That project was trying to reduce the amount of job families. Now, why is that relevant for skills? If you are more precise about a dedicated set of different job families, where data digital is one of those 5, it's far easier to interlink skill sets against that and buy and build structure, so that on all 5 of these, you can actually deliver the value and competitive differentiation. So I advise people who have very large and complex jobs first to do that, because that sequence really help you to do the skilling next. If I would have to make a critical assessment of skilling, apart from the obvious that everybody is dealing around the more digital world, and we are now asking also from board down, who can actually program in Python? That was not a question 5 or 10 years ago. And we're very close to a world where if you really want to be a digital organization, you have to understand the digital language. So that for me would be a really important skill in whatever you do. HR, business roles, legal, IT, obviously. But if I would then take a step back and say, what is the most important skill in a world where skills are changing, I would still go back to curiosity, Natal. So that, which is more an innate capability, also a skill of people. It's something that you can learn to some extent. But some people are more curious than others. And I like to believe that in the survival of the fittest world, of whose company will actually make the transition from where we are to where we need to be, stay relevant for a critical consumer base, see margins reduce. Anybody on the call who feels that, look for curious people, and beware of safe pair of hands nominations in the talent side. Because are these safe pair of hands still a safe bet when you look back 5 years after the decision?
Yeah, no, I love that theme. And I think, that is learning agility, isn't it? At the heart is being curious, really wanting to seek out new ways of doing things, learn more. The more you know, the less you know. Those kind of themes is what you really want in your workforce, definitely. So I can't believe it, but time is nearly up, Gerard. So, and there's a million and other things that myself and the audience would love to ask you. What I'd like to wrap up with is a key question that's come in around your HR agenda. And we didn't, and that was also something that we wanted to move on in our discussion. So what does all this mean for you and your team? And in particular, Tess has asked, what have you achieved so far? It's now March. What have you achieved so far in your people agenda in 2022? And how are you feeling about where you're going with your cultural change, your reskilling of the workforce, and really kind of helping this organisation win in a changing game?
Yeah, no, I keep it short because I see the time as well, but that's always a good question. I just did my performance review with CEO last week, so it's still fresh in mind. let's start with the positive. I've got a fantastic team. We made some changes to the team. Recruitment, for example, was not in talent, so I put the entirety of anything that's related to talent in there with a fantastic leader. I brought some people up from one level lower in the organization. They're doing great. People did it with me. I like to sort of do the same to others. So you have experienced people and people who come relatively fresh to the job with new insights and expertise. There are 3 big achievements as far as I'm concerned. First, get the leadership right. So within a month, I will be the longest member of the executive board with the CEO and the chief risk officer. For the rest, everybody's changed. And then one level below, extended leadership team. We've made important changes in December. And we brought the cultural capabilities, which for us are care, courage, and collaboration. Care for each other, but also for customers. Collaboration, not nice chit-chat at the coffee machine with like-minded souls, but really building bridges with people that are really different to you, which is a key success factor for digital. So a marketeer talking to somebody who does programming the whole day. And then the magic that comes out of that. And courage, of course, because you have to try new things and you will make mistakes and you need to create a culture where that is okay. So I'm quite happy with that. Succession planning, far better. So if we look at those moves that we're making, quite a lot of those we saw coming, which is good. And learning already, I'm really proud with the pilot, but 200 now for reskilling is something that I really believe will lead to adaptability of the bank. And then we made huge strides on equal pay for equal work. So the entirety top structure of the bank was newly evaluated, and we brought equal pay to equal work to the core of what we do, which I think is, and then performance management. We use a 5-point Likert scale, and there was always a western wind blowing. So 4 and 5, what a lot of companies see, became the norm. We're now saying, hey, number 3, which is the perfect bell curve, of course, is somebody who delivers everything you want from a job. People on the call will recognize this. Doesn't go overnight, but slowly moving towards normalcy around a tool that over time, if you don't maintain it, will get inflationary. And a great team within HR that actually like and enjoy working together. So but still a lot to do. And I look forward in one of the future events to talk a bit more about that later on.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I'm just so intrigued by the change of your leadership team as well. That's just that's really interesting. So we'll definitely get you back on and talk about what that is. And I think that just represents that this whole, if you're truly going to transform and win the game, as you've been talking about, then you've really got to have the right leaders, the right people. And I really like the 3 C's. Yeah, the capability, the courage, and the collaboration. That's really nice themes there. Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, very good. And enjoy the rest of the conference. And sometime, I hope to do the paella and wine with any of the people on the call right now, and to talk more about this fantastic profession we're in. Have a good day. Exactly.
Thank you so much. It was really insightful. Have a great day yourself.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Excellent.